thanks for being here. This is Automotive Anonymous, and that's the 2024 Subaru Ascent 8-seater Premium. And between its 3-row seating, its stout turbo engine, and Subaru's symmetrical all-wheel drive, it's actually one of the best new vehicles you can buy today. And although it's mostly unchanged for this new model year, it's still a very desirable family SUV alternative to the traditional minivan. And there's a lot that we need to talk about. So I'm gonna do a walk around, go through all the specs, initial driving impressions, 0 to 60 on GPS, and then my final thoughts to help you decide if this is the right 3-row SUV for you, or if you should leave it at the lot and look at something else to spend your hard-earned money on. Big thanks to Twin Falls Subaru for letting me borrow theirs for the day. I'll link this one below if you're interested. Otherwise, let's dive right in with this review. I've actually been a Subaru owner myself for the last 4 years now, including an Outback Wilderness for the last 2 years that has the same powertrain and turbo engine as this. But if you're new to the Ascent, you should know that it first came out in 2019. So this is still part of the first generation of the Ascent, which did have a refresh last year, making it look much more aggressive and a lot better on the front end in person, at least in my opinion, although looks are subjective. But this replaced the Subaru Tribeca, which was not a very good looking SUV. This won the battle for Subaru's largest vehicle, being a 3-row SUV, and they start at about $34,000, which is conveniently about the same as last year for 2023. There's still 8 trim levels of the Ascent, and they top out at about 50 grand for a fully loaded Touring. But the way this premium 8-seater sits, it's the second lowest trim level. The premium 7-seater is the third lowest trim level. So it has a few extra goodies over the base, and then a few extra things that are optioned, putting this one with its starting MSRP of 36.5 closer to 40 grand. But when you're gonna spend 40 grand on a Subaru Premium, what do you get? Well, it does have the 5,000 pound towing capacity, second seat climate controls, 4G connectivity, it has the all-weather package, and again, it has 8 seats. It's basically the Subaru minivan. And every trim level of the Ascent comes with the same powertrain and drivetrain, which is a 260 horsepower turbo boxer engine, a CVT that simulates 8 gears, and then Subaru's symmetrical all-wheel drive. So it's a proven platform. There's not many concerns or complaints on the forums with these. And you're basically, when you're buying a lower trim level Ascent, you're getting everything that you need for safety and practicality. You're just not spending an extra 5 or 10 grand for the frills and the luxuries of the higher trim levels. So these are actually a top safety pick plus. That means it has a bunch of active and passive safety features to help you avoid accidents while being a 5-star crash test rated vehicle overall. So some of those features include blind spot monitoring, adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist, some really bright LEDs. Anything else I missed, I'm going to overlay on the screen. And then these are fairly popular in the United States because they sell between the high 30,000 units per year up to the low 80,000 units per year. So they're not as popular as the Outback, the Forester, the Crosstrek, but that's just the nature of 3-row SUVs. It still sells quite well. And since this is Subaru's biggest SUV, it's worth being aware of the fact that it's 16.5 feet long, which really isn't that long for a 3-row. It has a 9.5 foot wheelbase, so it's planted on the road, about 6.5 feet wide, roughly 6 feet tall, and then they weigh 4,500 pounds with, as mentioned earlier, a 5,000 pound towing capacity. So if you have 2 Ascents, you can tow one behind the other one. This one has a payload capacity of just over 1,300 pounds, so being a lower trim level, you can actually hold about 200 more pounds of cargo than you can on a more luxurious trim level. And then it has about 8.7 inches of ground clearance with a 4:44 final drive ratio, and it can do a full circle in 38 feet. The last things to mention here is when the vehicle is locked, so is the gas door. So no one can be opening that and siphoning your gas when you unlock the vehicle, so is the gas door. It's a 19.3 gallon tank. This Premium is rated for about 20 city, about 26 highway. So your max road trip and range is almost 500 miles, more specifically about 480. And then it has 245 width, 60 sidewall, 18 wheels and tires. They do look pretty good, pretty big 12+ inch rotors in there, but you only have a temporary spare tire, which is located underneath the back of the vehicle like a real SUV or truck. And then this is your key with unlock, lock, hatch, release but not lift because it's not a power lift gate, and then panic button. No proximity key features on here, but you do have a real keyhole. And then there's a variety of dark, contrasting, different materials on the door panel. even some fake carbon fiber type of theme. You have some buttons, switches for the windows and controls, unnamed speaker, bottle holder, and this extra little cutout. I suppose that's just for design. Otherwise, medium-sized Subaru on the door sill, rubberized mats on this Premium, as well as the pedals, hood release, fuse box, your dash lighting options, and then some extra storage, trip reset, lighting stock, and you actually get powered seats. The cloth seats in Subarus are usually very comfortable, which this follows that basic theme. And then they're also fairly thin, as you can see, which is nice because it helps to save space. And a 5'11" sitting inside Subaru's largest SUV. It's easy to get comfortable. It feels like there's a lot of space, a lot of room around me. The horn is about as deep as a Subaru is ever gonna get. It is leather wrapped. You have voice and volume controls on the left, adaptive cruise settings on the right. If you wanna get into cruise control without eyesight cameras, like if there's fog, which you shouldn't be in cruise control if there's fog, or any other reason why you don't wanna rely on the cameras, push your cruise button and then hold that, it'll beep. That's the secret to get into cruise control without eyesight. Otherwise, this is the physical key. We're gonna fire it up. The needles dance, the headlights do their little theatrical display, and the basic heads-up display for adaptive cruise shines as well. Otherwise, the screen is kind of slow to get engaged. Thankfully, the Ascent does not have auto start stop because a lot of us who are Subaru owners don't like that. I just wish all the HVAC and heated seat controls weren't tied in so closely to the screen. Otherwise, down here you have a 12 volt. You have a nice little storage cubby that is rubber lined. No forward facing camera, but you do have an aux, a USB-C and A style. You could go down to manual mode, play musical gears if you want with those paddle shifters. Otherwise, this is the reverse camera. Because it's a large vertical screen, it's not a very big camera view. It's a little bit grainy, but it does okay. And then single X mode located through the screen. Otherwise, your cup holders, electronic parking brake, and then your pretty large center console that has a lifty tray. Otherwise, up top, this one doesn't have garage door openers, auto dimming mirrors, anything like that, but you still have the mirror to keep an eye on what's going on in the back seat. And then you have some basic incandescent lighting, same LED lighting actually on the mirror to check yourself out, and then it does slide, which is a nice feature. Just don't bump on the light like I did. Otherwise, we're gonna turn it off. We're gonna hop in the back. Otherwise, in the second row, you have some pretty good options on the door panel. You even have a cup holder, and then fancier models, you can see the cutout for they have an additional sunscreen, sunshade, which is pretty cool. Otherwise, soft touch, large armrest, probably about an 8-finger handle, your own power switch, your unnamed speaker, and basically an identical bottle holder to the front. Otherwise, you can see your steps to get into the third row or up to the roof rails, which these do look like the 700-pound roof rails that are on the Wilderness trim levels. Otherwise, this is your bench. This is the middle of the Subaru minivan. And when you climb up at 5'11", you can actually have quite a bit of room in front of your knees, and you can easily recline and get a little bit more comfortable. It's a pretty good view. No panoramic moonroof like some of the higher trims, but there is that climate control we talked about and some more plugins. You even have an armrest on the center, which is pretty cool. I do wish that they were rotated though, so you could fit your arm without compromising your storage space. Otherwise, it's a pretty nice place to be. And then when you're gonna hop in the third row, keep in mind that's made for pets, for children, or people without legs, because it's not very large. I don't really like it back here. It could be comfortable if you're, you know, 5'5" or shorter around town, I would assume, but longer road trips, no. Adults go in the middle row. Thankfully, you have 3 seats back here. I'm personally not overly impressed with the rear design of the Ascent. I think the front looks really good, really aggressive, but then this just kind of looks blah to me. But honestly, I don't think personally that any of the rears of the 3-row SUVs are necessarily that attractive compared to a more squared off truck-based SUV. Anyways, back here to open the hatch, unlock the vehicle, or just unlock the hatch. Remember, this is not a power liftgate, so the only 2 ways to open it are to climb through the back seats or to use the button that's underneath the Subaru emblem. And then back here you have 18 cubic feet of capacity when all 3 rows are up. If you drop the second row, such as this, you have about 47. So quite a bit more than something like an Outback or a Forester. And then when you drop the second row, you have about 86. So it's actually pretty impressive back here. But keep in mind the 18 cubic feet when the 3 rows are up, it's narrow. It's not very deep. but it is tall, so you're gonna have to stack objects. You're not gonna be able to have as usable a space as like an 18-foot trunk. Anyways, it's easy to lower it back down. And the rear passenger side basically is identical to the rear driver side. Nothing new back here. You still have all the same controls to maneuver the seats around, and you have a map pocket behind the passenger seat, so you can be a designated backseat driver in this seat right here. And then while riding shotgun in the Ascent Premium, you have a nice big door panel, basically the same cup holder, bottle holder that's everywhere else, and then your own locks and window switches. Medium-sized Subaru on the door sill. You have manual adjustments for the seat. My backpack's comfortable, having a good time. These really are good cloth seats. No storage though on the transmission tunnel, but you do have above the glove box, you can get a rubber liner like I have on my Outback. And then locking glove box. It's not large, but it's adequately sized for the basics of what you need, and no plugins like the 12 volt that's in the Outback. Otherwise, let's come around to the front. I'll pop the hood and I'll show you what the little 2.4 liter turbo boxer engine looks like. Under the hood is the 2.4 liter turbo boxer engine with a top mount intercooler that gets some nice cool air through the internal hood scoop right on top. It makes 260 horsepower at about 5,600 RPM and roughly 277 foot-pound-feet of twisty torque. That's what you feel in your bum when you're accelerating. That comes on as low as 2,000 RPM. And I personally think that modern boxer engines are about as reliable as any other turbo 4-cylinder these days. They're a proven platform and they're easy to work on. You can see all of the reservoirs are up top. The top mount oil filter so it doesn't get knocked off when you're actually off-roading, like this vehicle's moderately designed to do. You have your oil dipstick, your serpentine belt, and your alternator right up front because this is a rear-wheel drive type of setup rather than a transverse longitudinal mounted front-wheel drive setup like most of what this competes against, where it's harder to work on. The space is tighter. This has lots of space. You could do most things on this quite easily, maybe other than your spark plugs in 100,000 miles. But let's drop the hood, take it for a drive. And here's my favorite part. I'm gonna time travel and teleport you to one of my favorite roads. We'll see how it drives, and then we'll meet back here for my final thoughts. Initial driving impressions of the Subaru Ascent 8-seater Premium is it's a really good vehicle. You could bring 7 of your favorite people to ride along with you, as long as you combined weigh less than 1,300 pounds. But look, visibility, it's pretty good. Maybe tint the front windows if you want. But overall, the A, B, and C pillar really aren't that bad. It's not that wide until it gets to the D pillar in the back. Because it's an Ascent, this is basically Subaru's best model. It's the most insulated. It feels the most stable on the road at 16.5 feet long and a 9.5 foot wheelbase. It's planted. It does really well. If you have to get up to speed, being the premium and not weighing as much as the more luxurious, heavier, higher end models, it actually is a little bit faster on GPS, and you're gonna see if you saw my Onyx Limited video recently. But overall, it does really well. With almost 9 inches of ground clearance, it feels confident on the road, very stable. The speakers, even though they're not upgraded on this, they do okay because there's not a lot of wind and road noise you're fighting against, at least with these all-season tires that this comes on factory. And because the wheels are only 18-inch, you have a pretty good amount of sidewall. I honestly wouldn't want the 20-inch wheels that the higher end trim levels have on this. I'd probably want to go aftermarket personally. And when you're already paying upper 40 grand for a new vehicle, the last thing you want to have to feel like you need to do is pay more for wheels and tires. All the safety features of this are fantastic. I'm comfortable, the backpack's having a good time, and these cloth seats hold you in place pretty well as long as you're not turning, changing directions too fast, or going around a corner. Remember, this is a big unibody vehicle, and if you have to do the moose test or change direction, say going 20 miles an hour, there's a lot of body roll, but thankfully you don't very often have to drive like that. And then if you have to get on the brakes for any reason, even at, we'll do maybe 3/4 pedal, you can hear everything slide forward and it comes to a stop pretty darn quickly. And that wasn't even nearly full pedal. Anyways, guys, let's get to the private road. We'll do a 0 to 60 so I can show you how quick this Premium is, and then we'll get to my final thoughts. Because of our altitude, this is down on power about 10%, but let's see what it can do. Traction off, brake rev on, let's go. Still pretty impressive for 3 rows. True 0 to 60 came in at 7.65 seconds. not bad. Here's the graph, and then my final thoughts. My final thoughts of the 24 Ascent Premium 8-seater is overall, I think it's a really good vehicle. Even though it has some fake cladding grille design and no fog lights on a $40,000 Subaru, it offers a lot of stuff. It's going to keep you and your family as safe as it reasonably can. And for being a 3-row vehicle, it's only 16.5 feet long, which is only half a foot longer than a Subaru Outback. So it's actually pretty well sized. It's going to fit in a lot of garages fairly well, and it does a lot of things to make life easier. So if you are up to a family of 5, but you maybe on occasion have extra stuff to haul, or some friends to bring along, maybe your pet, maybe your golden retriever, as the Subaru commercials like to show us, this might be the right vehicle for you. But ultimately, what matters more than my thoughts and opinions are yours, because you are the one potentially buying this. So comment below, have you owned an Ascent? Are you considering it? And what are you comparing it to? I want to know all of that stuff. If you like this video, please consider liking this video. That's the only thing I ask. And if you want to follow along with my journey, you're welcome to subscribe. I always post at least once a week. And until next time, which I hope to see you again, take care.